North Koreans were thrown into the forest to cut off the Ukrainian bridgehead in Kursk. Szabadon Magyar X chaneel reports this. It is noted that actually, they are now in the worst possible position, as they can't progress on the open fields and Ukrainian forces encircle them on every side. It should be noted that Russian and North Korean forces have made significant battlefield advances in recent days in the Kursk region of Russia, threatening Ukraine's supply lines and its hold on a patch of land it hopes to use as a bargaining chip in future negotiations, according to Ukrainian soldiers, Russian military bloggers and military analysts. Working together, a new influx of North Korean soldiers and well-trained Russian drone units, advancing under the cover of ferocious artillery fire and aerial bombardment, have been able to overwhelm important Ukrainian positions, Ukrainian soldiers said. The Telegraph reports that 10,000 Ukrainian troops are at risk of being surrounded after Russian troops broke through the front line and advanced on a critical supply line from two directions in the Kursk region of Russia. Russian forces took Sudza, which is about 11 kilometers deep into Russian territory, crossing the border with Sumy Oblast from the north. Sudza is located in the Kursk region, part of which Ukraine controlled last summer after a surprise offensive, giving it leverage in possible negotiations to end the war. Significant numbers of North Korean troops are reportedly involved in the offensive, attempting to cut off Ukrainian forces by using drones to disrupt Kiev's supply chains. A junior sergeant who spoke to the Telegraph said Ukraine was considering pulling back from Kursk to avoid losses. We want to avoid losses. The fear of encirclement is real. A map from the Ukrainian Deep State project shows that almost three-quarters of Ukrainian forces on Russian territory are in a state of near total encirclement and are at risk of being split in two. The troops remaining near the border are in contact with the main forces through a narrow corridor about a kilometer long and less than 500 meters wide at its narrowest point. The only Ukrainian road to Sudza is within range of Russian drones, making efforts to hold the area and a possible retreat much more difficult.
Russia's Su-34 fighter bombers are clearly not the ideal weapon in the war in Ukraine. They are increasingly facing growing threats from Ukrainian F-16 pilots, writes former US Army officer and military analyst Brent Eastwood in an article on 1945. Using advanced tactics, Ukraine is seeking to neutralize the Su-34's heavy bombing capabilities, reducing their combat effectiveness and undermining Russian aviation. This intensifying air confrontation could significantly affect the future course of the war, the expert noted. According to him, Ukrainian pilots on the transferred American F-16 fighters are becoming bolder, more effective, and are challenging Russian Su-34 aircraft. The author recalled that in October 2024, the Su-34 likely fell victim to a Ukrainian F-16 during a bombing raid near the city of Kramatorsk. The expert emphasized that the Su-34 is one of Russia's best fighters, and the loss of even one such aircraft in a battle with the Ukrainian F-16 is a disgrace to the Russian Federation. It's a signal to Putin's air force that Russia still doesn't have complete air superiority after 3 years of war. While the F-16s Ukraine flies are older models, they have become more effective in the skies over Ukraine. Any loss of an Su-34 is a setback for the Russian war effort. The Su-34 is a twin-engine, two-seat aircraft. It has been actively used by the Russians since 2014. It was developed as an improved version of the Su-27 airframe. The Su-34 is armed with a 30mm GSH-301 cannon. It can carry heavy bombs, a full complement of air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles, as well as anti-ship missiles and anti-radar munitions. It has an electro-optical fire control system and a forward-looking infrared pod. Let us recall that media previously wrote that in October 2024, it was reported that a Ukrainian F-16 could have shot down a Russian Su-34 in an air battle. The Su-34 is still making surface strikes against Ukrainian positions. They are using Fab 1500 and Fab 500 aerial bombs equipped with universal planning and correction modules, according to the publication Bulgarian Military. Fab 1500 and Fab 500 are heavy bombs that are around 13 feet long and 19 inches in diameter. The warhead can weigh as much as 1,500 pounds. The blast creates deadly fragmentation, and they can penetrate underground to hit fortified bunkers and command and control centers. These power plants push out a top speed of Mach 1.6 with a range of 2,500 miles. While the F-16s that Ukraine flies are older models, they have become more effective over the skies in Ukraine. Any Su-34 lost is a hindrance to the Russian war effort. The F-16 pilots are more daring as they fly additional missions. While the Fighting Falcon has no reported kills this year that have reached the Ukrainian media, there is always a threat that a Ukrainian Air Force pilot could win a dogfight against the Su-34. In the Pokrovsk direction, desperate Russian commanders attempted to achieve a breakthrough at any cost. With Ukrainians creating a kill zone for vehicles, Russians started deploying horses, re-implementing cavalry into modern warfare. Euromaidan press media outlet says, south of Pokrovsk, Russian forces are desperate to push westward, attempting to put as much distance as possible between their rear positions and the relentless Ukrainian drone operators targeting their rear. Their constant drone strikes are devastating Russian supply lines, command centers, and units moving to the contact line, severely disrupting an already weak logistical network. Euromaidan Press says that to counter this, the Russians aimed to seize control of the small settlements scattered across the vast open fields in the area, which would serve as launching points for further assaults westward, while denying the Ukrainians the ability to do the same in the other direction. While frozen ground conditions technically allow Russian forces to maneuver their remaining armoured vehicles more effectively, their ability to conduct large-scale mechanized assaults has been severely weakened by the staggering number of vehicle losses sustained over months of fighting. Despite the solid terrain, the battlefield dynamics remain under Ukrainian drone dominance. Russian forces have found it nearly impossible to advance without being spotted, and any attempt at rapid movement results in swift targeting by Ukrainian artillery and drones. The regular Russian tactics of using the survivors of failed mechanized assaults to dig in along the tree lines does not work with completely frozen ground, as it is too hard to dig in quickly enough before Ukrainians fully eliminate them with drones. Russian assault groups that manage to cross open terrain are often left exposed without cover and subsequently eliminated by Ukrainian drone strikes. With few alternatives, the Russian advance has been restricted mainly to the settlements in the fields, relying on spread-out buildings for cover. Meanwhile, Ukrainian mechanized units continue to operate effectively, reinforcing positions, rotating troops, and maintaining steady pressure on Russian-held settlements. Footage shows how two Russian fiber-optic guided drones attacked a Ukrainian Cossack 2M1 armoured vehicle but were unable to detonate, leaving the crew unharmed. Euromaidan Press says that overall, the ongoing battle near Pokrovsk illustrates the widening gap in military capabilities between the two sides. While Ukrainian forces maintain mobility with modern mechanized forces, Russian troops are being pushed into increasingly outdated and desperate tactics, relying more and more on animals to sustain their operations. If this trend continues, Russian attempts to advance westward will remain slow, costly, and ultimately unsustainable, while Ukrainian defenders continue to tighten their hold on the battlefield and winning the war of attrition.